We will make a start. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to Taylor Root's interim in-house webinar. I'm Priya Shah. I head up Taylor Root's interim in-house legal offering, along with my co-chair, Hella Bousif, who is an expert in the contract legal market. We're really delighted to have you all with us this morning as we welcome our two esteemed guest panelists, David Harrigan and Holly O'Connell. Thank you so much. So David, I'm sure won't mind me saying, is an expert in the interim market. He's worked for some established companies for a number of years, and we're delighted to bring to you his expertise and years of experience navigating the market, and along with his experience making the move to the UK. Holly is a highly experienced and respected in-house legal advisor, currently working for First Group PLC. And we're really excited for Holly to share her expert industry insights and perspective on the current in-house interim market in the UK. So thank you both and welcome to the webinar this morning. So for the structure of today's session, we'll be talking through David and Holly's career journeys, their reasons for deciding to take their legal careers to London, respectively from Australia and New Zealand, so a couple of different perspectives there. We'll also talk through the benefits and challenges of taking a contract legal role when arriving in the UK, and then some advice from each of them for lawyers looking for in-house legal roles in London and how to best approach the interim route. We'll round off with some top tips. I'm sure they've got some little nuggets to pass on, and then finish with an overview of the market from Hella. We'll also have a chat function running throughout the course of the webinar. So if you have any questions, please note those down in the Q&A box and we'll get through those at the end of the session. So before we kick off, Helen and I thought it would be really useful to get a temperature sense of the room. You've all joined the webinar with a keen to sort of hear about the interim market. So it'd be great to know at this stage why an interim opportunity is of interest to you. And maybe if you haven't really thought about it, we've also got an option there to select unsure. So we'll kick off with that. You should see the poll pop up on your screen any second now. So it should be up on your screen now. And you'll just need to select the reasons. You can select multiple reasons as well that apply to you. So why is an interim opportunity of interest to you? So I can see lots of people participating. Thank you for getting involved there. So we've got flexibility, opportunity to try different industries, lucrative day rates, networking opportunities, or maybe you're just a bit unsure and haven't really thought about it too much, and that's fine. We can go into the reasons why people do tend to take them. Right, we've got quite a few. Okay, 80% of you have answered now, so we'll just wait a couple more seconds for anyone still deciding. Brilliant, that looks great. So, yeah, brilliant. So we've got about 90% of you have now answered, and that's a really great response. Thanks so much. So the results that I can see here, that flexibility and the opportunity to try different industries are two of the key ones there. And that makes a lot of sense. We tend to see that when we're speaking with lawyers coming over, that's what they're looking for. And often on the interim side, particularly, our clients are able to offer a really good degree of flexibility. And I think Holly and David as well, during the course of the session, will talk through the opportunities and the different industries that they've been able to have a look at and experience through taking contract roles. So thank you all so much for participating. And I'm going to just move on now to a very quick snapshot of David and Holly's backgrounds and how they got to where they are today, both having entered the UK legal market with contract roles initially. So David is an exceptional general counsel. He's an expert in his field. Don't get too embarrassed now, David. But he trained at what is now Norton Rose in Australia, moved with a partner from the firm in-house to a global media business, and quickly realised that this was his preference over private practice. So within a couple of weeks, he'd moved with the company to Hong Kong. Having spent some time in the Far East with that company, David then made the decision to move to London, where he was introduced to the UK legal market as a head of legal in a maternity cover role with Fremantle Media. Subsequently, he secured senior permanent positions with Disney and Paramount, so some fabulous names there on the CV. David then took some time away from legal work to launch his own design business, clearly a man of many talents, and then returned in a contracting capacity to the UK legal market, securing assignments with the likes of Virgin Media and Upfield. He's now Deputy General Counsel with a FTSE 250 company in his current role, the latter of which we had the pleasure of supporting him with. So we really look forward to hearing some useful and interesting insights from you, David, and your journey over the course of the session. And over to Holly, brilliant commercial lawyer. She's qualified in New Zealand with a boutique firm, then moved in-house to the Ministry of Justice before relocating to London. Here she's actually consulted with a really diverse array of clients, including the Home Office, HSBC, Coach, Bank of Scotland, Starbucks, and First Group, where she is currently. And the First Group role actually began as a temporary contract. This is a great example of where a company didn't have headcount for a permanent employee, but had the requirements and took on an interim lawyer. And that role has since been offered permanently. So again, the opportunities that a contract role can bring. It was a pleasure supporting Holly in securing her two most recent opportunities. And Holly, over the discussion, I think we'll talk about how the variety of contract roles has helped to shape your career. So that opportunity again to try different industries and the lessons learned from these opportunities. So I'd like to hand over the conversation to the panel now with a few questions that we've got. So David, if we start with you, obviously had a very successful career in Australia and then Hong Kong, and then decided to make the move to London. So what influenced your decision to take your legal career to London, and more specifically considering interim and contract opportunities?
First of all, thank you for letting me part of this discussion, and thank you all for joining. I spent 3 years working for Rupert Murdoch in Hong Kong, and there was a fairly significant regime change within the business, which happens every 3 to 5 years with News Corp companies, and the entire exec were jettisoned, and most of the legal team as well. But I didn't feel like it was my time to return to Australia. And so I moved to the UK at the same time as the financial crisis, 2009, so a long time ago. And headcount was frozen across the board. And so I picked up a mat leave role at Fremantle Media. And then 12 months into that role, was offered a permanent role at Disney, which is where I spent the bulk of my career. The reason why I'm contracting is twofold. First of all, when I was appointed head of legal for Paramount Pictures, I realized after about 12 months that I was working EMEA hours, so regular hours, plus East Coast hours. So when you work for a major Hollywood studio, typically you're working, say, 5:30 p.m. London time until around 10:30 most nights. And that was clearly incompatible with being a present father and a good husband. So we tried to make it work, but after about 18 months, I realized that that I needed to find an alternative career path. And that also coincided with me launching my own design studio. I've been a Danish design anorak for as long as I can remember. And being a contractor and being able to dictate hours, whether it be 3 days a week or 4 days a week, and launching my own studio, a quick plug, Arben, ABEN, if you're on Instagram, made me realize what my passion was, and fueled the fire within. So contracting was ostensibly the way forward as a best of both worlds.
Yeah, David, I think that's really interesting, and obviously touches upon the points of the flexibility piece and being able to kind of work your life around your work in a sense, rather than, you know, life being work. And I think that is a real benefit of what the contract market can bring to people. Particularly, I think, Holly, you might touch on this in a second, but, you know, if you are coming over from Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and you want to be exploring and, you know, maybe traveling a bit and things like that, it's something that, or even launching your own business, it's something that the contract market can really afford and allow you to do. Thank you so much, David, for that. And Holly, obviously your situation was slightly different. Boutique firm, an in-house role in New Zealand, and I think came over to the UK far sooner in your career. So, what similar question really in terms of what influenced that decision, and why the interim market really?
Well, I feel like my answer to this question isn't as glamorous as David's, but I came over just as most Aussies and Kiwis do. They come over to do their OE and travel, and see the world outside of what we have in New Zealand. And the basic answer is I did an interim role because I needed a job ASAP, because I needed to pay the bills and earn some pounds. So I got a job pretty quickly in interim role, a contracting role, for the Treasury solicitor. And you know, in these jobs, they ask you why you want to work there, and you can't say I need a job ASAP. So I very quickly became passionate about judicial review and immigration law. But the best way to get a job is to have a job. So it was an excellent way for me to get my feet on the ground, and get some UK experience before I found my next role, which I was a little bit more into. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple, really.
Completely makes sense, and that's the thing. Interim roles, there's such a quick turnaround sometimes, and we're getting a bit more lead time on some of them at the moment, which is great. But if you have just landed, or even if you're on your way in, it's a really quick entry into the UK market, and then to build up that experience. So yeah, I think that was a really good choice for you, because the career path since then, as we know, has been fantastic. And what would you say, Holly, interim roles have done to enhance your journey? What key learnings have you had that have kind of got you where you are today?
Well, I think if you look at my CV, it's incredibly colourful, and I've had a recruiter say to me before that that I need to explain it, and it's not a great look that I've had so many different jobs, and I completely disagree. And I told him so, that it really shows my ability to be able to go into lots of different roles, settle in quickly, and make change, and get on with the job, which I think is a skill that a lot of Aussies and Kiwis have. They are willing to just knuckle down and figure it out. And I think one of the major benefits I have got from all the kind of diverse work experience that I've had is that I've worked in a lot of different industries. I've worked with a lot of different people. So I've worked in banks, I've worked in fashion, and now I work in the transport sector. So you have the ability to jump into those roles, figure it out, and get on with it. And then you'll know it. That's kind of like your known commodity. So you can be hired to just get on with the job. And I quite like people. So it means that you have the opportunity to work with lots of different people, lots of different backgrounds, and you can kind of just get on with whoever you're working with, and do that. So I think that is kind of one of the main things that is a real positive from working in interim roles, because you get lots of different experience. One of the challenges, I suppose, is that you might be worried about security of tenure, or you want a job for a long time, or you're worried about, say, you want to buy a house over here or wherever, and you need a job, needs the salary for your mortgage or whatever. So that can be a little bit daunting, but I've lived here for 10 years and I've had interim roles the entire 10 years. This is my first permanent role. So, and I've bought a house. So if that makes you all feel a bit more comfortable about it. So it's all doable. And I think the experience that I've had has really made my career. It's also made me figure out what I like and what I do not like. So I really wanted to work in fashion, and I got the chance to work in fashion. It didn't quite work out the way that I wanted to, but I learned some really key things from that role. And that the most important thing that I have learned in my career is the people that you work with. And and that has been my top priority every time that I've gone for roles. And I've managed to end up in a role that with a fantastic team, and that has led me to a place where I feel really happy and stable in my career. So that has been fantastic.
Oh, that's amazing, Holly. And it's been so great to see your journey as well. Heather and I have obviously known you for a long time now, and to see that kind of progression through the different industries and seeing you figure out what you enjoy and then being able to find that longer term, position, because that's what you want to do. You don't always have to. Some people might go back, but I think that all those things that you've mentioned are really key contributors as to why an interim role is advantageous. And obviously there are some challenges that people will navigate, but thank you so much for that. And David, what would you say the contract market has taught you?
The importance of being open-minded about the different roles, and Holly's self-described colourful career mirrors mine to a degree as well. Over the last 4 years, I've gone from ad tech startup to margarine behemoth to pay TV, and now working in the city for the first time. So it's variety, and I haven't taken that for granted. I spent the bulk of my career at Disney working in media distribution, and that meant advising the business on licensing deals with the likes of Sky, Netflix, Amazon, and Virgin Media. But it's pretty nichey. And one of the criticisms that a lot of these larger legal teams face is that the guardrails are definitely up as to what you can do and what you can't do. I found my experience with interim roles to be much more broad than that. Today I've got a meeting with HR on an employment issue, and then we're looking at another office in New York, so I've got to look at the lease for that. And then there's a number of subscriptions that are coming up for renewal, and then I think I'm having lunch with Deloitte. So there's all sorts of things that come up in interim roles, and that's what I love about doing that. But that also comes hand in glove with the want or perhaps even the need to challenge yourself. It's very easy to stay safe, and I know a lot of my friends who I graduated with are now partners at myriad firms in Sydney and Melbourne and beyond. They haven't really left Australia. They don't really have that international experience, and they're always very, very curious to hear about what I've been up to. So if you want to grow as a person, if you want to challenge yourself, then coming to the UK and working in interim role will certainly challenge you. And finally, the importance of trust. There can be a misconception that working in interim role, you function as a quasi substitute teacher, and you'll only be here for 6 months, so whatever you say now can be ignored. And I really took it upon myself to make sure that I knew who the key decision makers were with all the companies I worked with. I got to know them. That was difficult during COVID because you couldn't do that physically. But taking proactive steps to really get to know the business and the people that work in the business, so that you're not just a faceless email address. You're a human being that wants to make an active contribution to whoever you're engaged with. So yeah, variety, wanting to challenge yourself, and building trust is what I've learned.
Amazing, thank you, David. And I think one of the things you touched upon there is, not being somebody who's kind of a quasi substitute teacher, as you mentioned, but somebody who is actually seen as an important part of the business. And that's one of the things that with an in-house role, often people are looking to be part of the business and be able to engage with the commercial stakeholders and that kind of thing, as opposed to maybe private practice or something like that. And as an interim, you still get that exposure, and I think you get it really well because you are there to do a job, and it's a very important part of that. And that's why clients will go out and find expert lawyers who can come in very quickly, because they are an important part of the business, and that's very necessary. So thank you so much. if we move on to kind of some advice now. So Holly, what advice would you have for approaching the interim route for lawyers coming over or looking to come over?
My main piece of advice would be give everything a go. So check your ego at the door. You're not too good to go to an interview where you don't think you're interested in the industry. You honestly don't know where it's going to lead you. I've ended up working in an industry which I kind of didn't really ever think about, and it's been a fantastic opportunity for me. So you don't know where it's going to lead you, and if it doesn't work out to a role, you don't know who you're going to meet that might think you're great and suggest that you could meet someone that they know, especially when I know in New Zealand everyone tends to know each other, but you're about to be dropped into a massive pond where you don't really know that many people, and the ability to network and meet as many people as you can, I think it's really invaluable. And I think when you're looking for an interim role, if you're coming from a firm and you're thinking, okay, maybe I'm going to do in-house, you have the opportunity to marry what you might actually be passionate about outside of work with your job. So you could think, okay, well, I'm really interested in outdoor pursuits or fashion or whatever, and you can look for a job in that industry, and that might be really fulfilling for you. So it's such a great opportunity to bring together two things: your skill set that you've spent a lot of time at university and working to develop, plus something else that you're interested in. So just give every opportunity that you can a go, and call Priya and Hella.
Love that. Thanks, Holly. No, it's so important because, oftentimes, Hella and I as recruiters or partnering with our clients will have a certain amount of information, but you can go to an interview and maybe you think it's not the right thing, but the actual information that you get from clients and having those face-to-face conversations can kind of determine whether the quality of work is there and the richness of the opportunity, which maybe just on a piece of paper, job specification or speaking with us might not come through as much as obviously speaking with a hiring manager. And as much as we try to, we have great relations with our clients, we won't always have the depth of information. And as you say, the networking opportunities, just getting in front of people, it is super, super important. So thanks for that. David.
Sorry, can I just also say that it's really good practice to speak your CV. So just use it as a practicing opportunity to say, I've done this, this, and this. These are my skills. I can bring this to the table. And if it doesn't result in a job, who cares? You've just had an opportunity to practice that. And I think that's a really important skill to develop too. Sorry.
Oh, brilliant point. No, great point to make. Thank you for that. David, your advice and also what you feel maybe we might have gone over some of these, but if there are any other advantages that you've gained from choosing interim contracts or potential pitfalls, because we obviously have to look at it in a well-rounded way.
Yeah, sure. The primary reason why I moved to contract roles is static hours. So between 9:30 a.m. and 6:30 p.m., I am a gun for hire, for want of a better term. So my time is theirs to use as they please. But outside those hours, a time that I spend with my family, that I spend running my business, and anything else that may crop up. You don't have that luxury in a permanent role. Certainly not a head of legal or a general counsel role. So I've really enjoyed being able to have certainty around the hours that I've been working. I've touched on it before, but probably the biggest advantage in hindsight, or from my own experience, has been the breadth of coverage. My very first role, beyond being a permanent hire, was working for an ad tech slash martech startup. I attended the interview, and a lot of it was data protection related, and I fessed up and said, I wouldn't even say that GDPR is a secondary competence, let alone a primary competence, but they were clearly desperate. So I was offered the role, but it also meant that it was incumbent upon me to learn as much as I could about that particular area of the law. And I actually really enjoyed it. And it meant that I was amply employable for the next role that I was in. So there is an aspect of learning on the job. You know, I'll never be a DPO. I won't be an expert in employment law, but I know enough now to make myself dangerous. The only downside that I can think of is it can be difficult to say goodbye. You often hear stories of senior lawyers going on maternity leave, coming back, and the interim lawyer looking at the person that's come back from mat leave and basically saying to her or him, "What are you doing here? I'm really enjoying this role. I think I'll hang around." I've always been super respectful with respect to whoever I'm covering for. If it is a mat leave appointment, my guiding principle is that everything I touch should be as they've left it. So I don't make material changes to their filing, the way they file documentation. I don't bring in, CLM. I don't make any changes to process per se. I just want to be that safe pair of hands and move the department forward. And every role that I've had thus far has been extended, so the goodbyes haven't been quite as torturous. But you connect with people like you would in any walk of life. But those people that you connect with also potentially lead to further opportunities. So that's probably the only downside I can think of. But having clarity around the hours that I work and also the breadth of experience have been huge advantages working in an interim capacity.
Thanks, David. Yeah, so some really great advantages. And yeah, the goodbyes must be difficult, but you know, you get extended, and oftentimes that is the case. You know, they will find if you are a good lawyer, most of the time a client will try to find capacity for you to stay. It doesn't always happen, but it just opens up opportunity, which is fantastic. Holly, do you think there's anything else that you'd want to add in terms of any advantages that we might not have spoken about?
I think also, well, just another thing that kind of popped into my head was, even if a role is just for 3 months, it might be worth taking. You just don't know what's going to, I know it's like, I keep going back to, you don't know who you're going to meet, whatever, but lean into it. And I mean, I had a similar situation with your GDPR example, David, and I was interviewing for Starbucks and I didn't think I was qualified for the role. And I was really, really anxious about it. And my partner said to me, it's only a 3-month job. They can't fire you, we hope. Just lean into it and learn as much as possible. And it was honestly the best advice. And I did learn so much from that role. They actually tried to extend me. And I walked away from that role with some incredible connections. I made some really good friends in just 3 months. And it was one of the best jobs that I've taken because I just gave it a go. So don't be put off by, I don't want a 3-month job. I want a bit more security. Who knows where it's going to take you?
Definitely, yeah. 3-month contracts. The thing about the 3-month contract, it does raise concerns. You think, I've got to look for another role really quickly. How's it going to look on the CV? But like you say, actually, it can really open up so many more opportunities, even if it's just your networking and you meet someone in that job who then moves and becomes a hiring manager somewhere else. It's your exposure. It's being able to say that you've got that UK in-house experience, which then lends so well to the next role, which might be a longer term role or might be another 3-month contract. And actually, they are some of the hardest roles to fill because of the short-term nature of them. So if a client can see that you can quickly go into a business, for 3 months, do what you need to do and move on. Actually, it's that adaptability and things like that that we've discussed before, Holly and David. So thank you so much for that. And finally, just some top tips. We've gone through lots of things of what people should be doing and the advantages and your experiences. Would you say there anything in particular, one or two tips, David or Holly, to round it off, that you would give to the audience today?
I'll start. Number one, and just to add to Holly's point, make sure you know your CV. I am not on any social media, so I'm not on LinkedIn. But if you are on LinkedIn, make sure it's up to date, and that there's no typos or anything that could be considered inaccurate. That's the first thing. The second thing is, again, Holly raised it before, is I think networking, to some degree, justifiably, is a loaded term. I am an introvert. I rarely do these panel discussions because I find them so uncomfortable. But I found that by signing up to seminars and various different mailing lists with firms that I admire. So I'm attending a media law session with Mishcon next week, and others. It means that I'm attending these breakfast seminars, attending these day-long catch-ups or refreshers. And once I take my 3 deep breaths before walking into the room, the number one thing I try to do is meet one person. If I meet one person, that's a successful day. And so broadening your networks is hugely important. The final thing I would say is you need to be resilient. The chances are at some point you will be homesick, and there will be photos or images that crop up on social media or on your WhatsApp of a friend's wedding or your mate's 30th, and you'll experience various bouts of FOMO. Pret coffee is awful, but the rewards are there. And actually, a friend of mine said to me the other day, who's just come over here, that the contracts that she is reviewing and negotiating, the value of those contracts are the same as what they were in Australia, but at a zero, and in pounds. So $100,000 contract in Australia, she's now negotiating $100,000 contract. She's now negotiating £1 million contract. So that's testing her mettle as well, because clearly there's a strategy and negotiation that comes hand in glove with high value contracts, but she's absolutely loving it and relishing the challenge. So yeah, that would be my closing remarks if there were.
Thank you.
I think the point about the CV is like really, really important. That is a really good tip. But there's so much excitement, so I feel so excited for everyone that's on the seminar thinking about coming to the UK. It's such an interesting place to be. Whether it's culture, travel, whatever that you're interested in, you're going to have so much fun. My youngest brother has just moved here, and he's on the doorstep of just found a job, found a flat, traveling, and I look back to my time of doing that and with great fondness. You've got so many exciting things ahead of you, and finding a job is just part of it. And I know we've spoken about this before, guys, but lawyers can be a bit stressed about trying to find a job maybe before they come, but it's not the end of the world if you arrive without a job. You're not already a failure, and it's really normal. So just try not to stress about it, because you will get a job. You are incredibly qualified, you're incredibly smart, and it will happen for you. You just have to take every opportunity that comes at you. And as David said about his friend that is negotiating these significantly greater contracts, there's also I think, well, from what I was doing in New Zealand, a broader range of work over here. And that's really exciting to sort of expand your experience. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Holly. And it is such an exciting time. It's a great place to be. London's always got something going on. Post-COVID, people are raring to get out there, and it's a fun place to be. Along with that, the job market is, really busy. So there are things going on, and as Holly said, it's just being about being open-minded and trying things out. So yeah, thank you both so much for talking us through your experiences, your thoughts, or your advice. It's been insightful, and I'm sure has provided some really useful takeaways for our audience today. So finally, last but certainly not least, Hella is going to give us an overview of the London interim in-house market. So over to you, Hella.
Thank you, Priya. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And as our guests have said, right now the interim in-house legal market is a great place to start if you're looking to move your legal career to London. We have been busy with a number of instructions over the last sort of 18 months, I'd say. It's been particularly busy. And the main reasons that contracts come up are because of maternity cover, there might be some extended sick leave cover as well, or just overflow projects where a team is particularly busy. And most of the contracts that we see will last between 3 to 12 months, I'd say. The most in-demand skill set are commercial technology and corporate M&A, and contracts can be offered on a fixed term contract basis where you're an employee of the business, albeit for a fixed period, or on a day rate, which offers a bit more flexibility. We are working across a whole range of sectors. It's everything from transport to media, technology, retail, and everything in between. So we work with a full range of businesses out there. We do find that the Antipodean talent pool is really attractive to our clients, and I think one of the reasons for that is that your training from the outset is very broad, very broad commercial contracts, corporate, and that lends itself really nicely to in-house roles, which are very broad and very varied in terms of the matters that you'll get exposed to. The lawyers in the UK, as you may know, are specialised much earlier in their career, and it can sometimes be difficult to make the transition in-house, or it just takes a lot of learning. But I don't think the move is as steep when you do qualify in New Zealand, Australia, or South Africa. As Holly and David have mentioned, these contract roles are a great way to get your foot in the door, try different sectors, and just see what you actually like and try different things. And they also provide, excellent networking opportunities as well. There may be an option to go permanent afterwards. So we are busy at the moment. The appetite for you guys for these interim roles remains strong. Obviously, we've had quite a lot of changes over in the UK around sponsorship and visas. So do your research, see what applies to you, and see how you can sort of come over here, whether it's the sort of TM Youth Mobility Visa. I saw there was a question about roles being offered permanent from the outset, and it is easier for businesses to sponsor people now, so do talk to Priya and myself about that, because there are businesses that are offering sponsorship for permanent roles from the outset as well, because that landscape has changed. But in terms of visas, do your research and see what applies to you. So if you would like to discuss in anything in more detail, please do reach out to Priya or myself. We'll be happy to chat through, and we'll follow up after this webinar with some collateral and the opportunity to sort of connect and ask us anything in addition. So over to you, Priya.
Thanks so much, Hella. A really great overview there. So as Hella mentioned, we have received some questions. We're going to open up to the questions from the audience. We've received quite a few, some of them along the same sort of vein. So if we start with one of them, which was, so there's actually a couple of questions that link together here, which was, have David and Holly cross-qualified as UK lawyers, and do you require this for an interim role? So I don't think either of you have, from my understanding, Holly, you haven't, have you? David, did you cross qualify or do the QLTS or anything like that?
No, I didn't. And to be completely honest with everybody, I've never been asked. I've never been asked in an interview. And I think that's one of the idiosyncrasies of qualifying, well, New South Wales, but Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, that the Venn diagram of legal principles almost overlap. I think if you were to move into a private practice role over here, it's something, it would be a nice to have for sure. But it's by no means essential in an in-house environment.
Yeah. I haven't requalified, and Priya, you and I have actually talked about it before, whether or not I should, and you kind of said I was too late in the game to do it. I'd accrued enough UK experience, and frankly, I wouldn't do it. I would have to be significantly bribed. I would never pay for it myself, and there'd have to be a big carrot at the end for me to take the time to go and do it. Partly because I'm quite lazy, but a lot of my friends in firms, and the firms have paid for them to do it because they've wanted them to be qualified. So that's the only time when I know people that have retrained, but it was something I considered doing, but I haven't had to do it.
Yeah,
sorry, Barry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that Heather and I, we place lots of Antipodean lawyers. We also place a few South African lawyers. The majority of in-house roles don't require you to cross-qualify or be UK qualified. It's more the experience that you can bring. If you're common law trained, then that's pretty much enough for our in-house roles and for in-house interim roles, and even probably for the permanent in-house roles as well. And somebody also asked whether the private practice in-house UK experience is necessary or essential to gain an in-house role in the UK. So whether private practice UK experience, we don't really find that either. If you can come over freshly from New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, if you've got the experience or transferable skills that could lend to an interim in-house role, then that's pretty much all we need. I think the important thing is to have the discussions with your recruiter, bring out the relevant experience so that they can then represent that to the client. So oftentimes, you might not have direct experience, but you've got stuff that's really transferable that maybe isn't shining through on your CV or on a piece of paper. So it's about having those conversations, meeting with Hella, myself, or whoever other recruiters are working on roles, so we can get to know you and then present that to our clients and kind of vouch for why you'd be good for the role. So we've also had a couple of other questions. Are there any in-house interim roles for a lawyer with a disputes background? Hella, do you want to touch on that one?
Yeah, so I'd say we obviously don't get many litigation roles in-house, but they do come up. So I actually have just placed a litigation lawyer in-house with an online gambling company. So they probably come up maybe about sort of half a dozen to a dozen times a year. It's not the bread and butter of what we see in demand, but they do come up. And actually sometimes, especially because the market's been so busy, we have had businesses who have been wanting to recruit someone to do commercial work, but they've been a bit more open about the background of the person that does that role. And I think litigation can lend itself quite nicely to commercial roles sometimes, because you've seen where contracts have gone wrong, and therefore, when you are drafting, negotiating, you're sort of forethinking about those problems, and probably, the drafting is a bit tighter. So yeah, there are opportunities, and it is worth sort of speaking to us after this webinar about that in more detail.
I've actually got a real life example. So when I was at Disney, I was looking to bring somebody into my team on an interim basis to work on a fairly, well, the most significant deal that we do every 4 years. And I interviewed a Kiwi lawyer with a disputes background, and she was just brilliant. Like she was she interviewed so well. I don't know, I can't recall which university she went to, but I do remember on a CV, it mentioned that she'd won the Golden Gavel. I don't know what that means, but she was meant to be with us for 6 months. By the end of the 6 months, I made her perm. She was that good. And so if you are a lawyer with a litigation background or dispute resolution background and you want to stick to that, I would suggest that the positions are probably limited. In the same way, if you want to come over here, you've got an insurance background and you definitely want to work in insurance. But if you're open to working in a transactional capacity or in another field, I personally would certainly welcome that. And also, it offers a fresh perspective. And when we talk about D&I, it's just not physical. It's also what other perspectives you bring to the table as well. And so anytime I'm interviewing, there's always a couple of wildcard candidates that I like to interview, purely because I think that they might be able to offer a different perspective on what we're trying to do.
Brilliant. Thank you, David. We've received so many questions. We're not going to be able to get through them all, but I think one really important one is the last one. And then we will follow up with all of you who've attended with contact details, how to get in touch with us with any of the other questions that we've not been able to answer. But one of the really important ones, I think, has been asked, is it easier to secure a role on the ground in London rather than from your respective countries overseas? Really good question, actually. And it's actually, nowadays, doesn't really matter. The infrastructure is there for clients to interview remotely, and it's actually become very standard process, whether it's a role where somebody is based in the UK already, or whether you're based overseas. So Teams, in Microsoft Teams interviews, Google Meet interviews, these are all part of the course now. So actually Helen and I speak with lots of Antipodean lawyers, South African qualified lawyers now as well, who are based overseas, and we get the ball rolling. And I think it's actually really important because so many of our in-house clients love Antipodean lawyers. It's the background, it's the breadth of experience, the work ethic, all of those kinds of things. And we're also actively being asked to source lawyers from these sort of backgrounds as well, who can come in with broad corporate commercial experience. So in short, I think the best time really to reach out is actually once you've decided what you want to do, and once you have done your research on your visa situation, have an indication of when you're going to come over to the UK, maybe some idea of where you're going to be living, because these things will all give our clients a bit more confidence in when they want to make an offer. We can explain your situation, but absolutely being based in New Zealand, Australia, or South Africa will not be a barrier. We just need to know that you will have the right to work in the UK, what that's going to look like, and be able to have those conversations with you. Our clients are also very flexible in terms of being able to interview earlier or later in the day to make it more sort of accommodating, and it's just becoming really common now. So whether you're here on the ground already or whether you're sort of starting your search from your respective countries, we'd be definitely happy to hear from you. So yeah, anything to add to that, Hella?
No, nothing much, just post-COVID world, the landscape's changed so much when it comes to this. So I think we would have said pre-COVID, yes, you do need to be on the ground, wouldn't we, particularly to get an interim role. But now, because the market has been super busy and because we have the technology there, everybody's initial interviews are being done by Teams, whether it's a UK qualified living here, looking for a role here, or somebody overseas. And that sort of really has been a game changer. But as Priya said, make sure you've got everything in place before you approach the market, your visa, you've got a plan for how you'll exit your job and come over here and have a rough idea about where you're going to live. We can definitely get the sort of ball rolling whilst you're back home.
Okay, everyone, we are actually out of time. I'd love to thank my co-host Hella, and thank you to our brilliant panelists, David and Holly. Yeah, I'm sure that your soundbites and experiences have given everyone plenty of food for thought, no matter where they are in their journey. And thank you all for joining us. We will be emailing with any reference material that was discussed, a recording as well of the session if you want to watch us again, or share with any of your colleagues. And with that email, we'll also include contact details for Holly, David, myself, and Hella. So I appreciate we didn't get through to everyone's questions, but we will be sort of available after the session, and we'd love to speak with any of you who are looking to make the move or who'd like any further discussion. So thank you all so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.